Hello friends, and welcome back to my homestead. Today we're in the kitchen because earlier today we picked a big basket filled with tomatoes, and I said to myself, what's my motto? When we have in abundance, save it for the future. So tonight I'm going to make some tomato sauce. Now there are many recipes for tomato sauce and everyone has their recipe of tomato sauce, and that is wonderful, but I would like to share my version of tomato sauce that my family absolutely adores. So let me show you how I'm going to make it. You ready? Okay, so I have 18 pounds of tomatoes here, and we gathered them, I washed them, I removed all the stems, and now I'm going to put them in a pot on the stove just to soften them up a little bit, because after they soft, I'm going to process them in my food processor where I will remove all the skins and all the seeds, simply because we don't like our sauce with seeds and skins. So I'm just roughly breaking them up and dumping them in the saucepan, and I have this gigantic saucepan. I think this one I'm just gonna keep a whole, it doesn't matter. So again, this one is a little bruised, so I'm gonna throw it away. But we're going to just heat it up quickly. Okay, so I have them in the pot, and I just lift up what's on the bottom. Lift them off the bottom so they don't burn. Even though there's a little bit of water in the bottom, I still don't want anything to burn. Okay, so the tomatoes had warmed all up, and look how they decreased in size, and they released a lot of juice. We're gonna process them through this machine. It's an attachment basically that is going to puree and separate the skins and the seeds from the tomato, which we need. Okay, so here are our ingredients. So this softened 18 pounds of tomatoes. I have 1.5 pounds of onions, but you may use more or less depending on your taste. And we love garlic in my family, so this is a gigantic head of garlic, but again, you may want to use less. Then I have a few bay leaves. I'm just choosing to use 4. And then I have fresh basil from my garden and fresh oregano. Now, if you don't have fresh, that's okay. You can always use dry. And then if for this recipe, you're probably gonna need about a tablespoon of dried oregano and a tablespoon of dried basil. But in my case, I have fresh. And because I have fresh and it's in abundance, I'm gonna be using a lot of it. Okay, what else do we need? We're gonna need salt. And for this amount of recipe, I'm probably gonna use about a table or maybe a little bit over a table, but again, I'm gonna taste it and see if I like it. Then I'm gonna use a 1/4 cup of sugar because I like to cut on the acidity a little bit. A teaspoon of black crushed pepper, and again, you may wanna use more. I'm gonna use 1 cup of oil because I'm gonna need to saute my onion. Then I have a cup of white wine. Yes, my recipe calls for white wine. And then this is just a white vinegar, 5% vinegar that's sitting, that I'm going to be using at the end. I'm going to be putting just a little bit of vinegar into each quart jar. So I'm going to keep it aside for now. So yes, at this point, I'm going to be putting this through my machine. So it's going to make a Okay, that's all we have left from 18 pounds of tomatoes. We have about 18 cups in this pot, big bowl, and then in this measurement cup, I want to say it's probably 10 cups. And all we have left for waste is this little tiny pile. That's all. Isn't this one? Okay, so we're going to saute this gently until everything is soft and translucent. I know some people don't like onion in their sauce, but my family loves onion. It's one of those staple things we have in our foods. And I do know that these onions will cook down so much that they will not be even noticeable in the sauce. So I'm just gonna cook them, I wanna say close to 10 minutes until everything is nice and soft. And then I will... Okay, so the onion is nice and translucent and it got much softer. I know the chunks are still kind of big. You're right, but they're going to cook down eventually. So it's quite all right. At this point, I'm going to be adding the wine. And I have 1 cup of white wine. I love that sound. I don't like to use the cheap wines, the cooking wines. They're not really good for any kind of sauces. So if you like to drink that wine, that's the kind of wine I use. Now, if you choose to omit wine for religious reasons or personal reasons, that's perfectly fine. This sauce will be just fine and totally delicious without wine. I feel safe using wine, even though we're not drinkers in my family, because the alcohol will cook out in the heating process and it will be totally gone. However, the flavor of the wine and the acidity will stay on, and that's going to be one of the reasons why I like to use wine, because it's acid and it's going to help to preserve my sauce for winter months. Okay, so the alcohol has evaporated, the liquid has reduced, the onion got even deeper yellow color. At this point, I'm going to be adding the tomato sauce. So I know it will splash, so I have to be careful. You know, I watch people cook this sauce outside or in their garages. I see people cooking, and it makes sense. I know why they're doing it. It's because it's a messy process, and wait until it starts bubbling. It's going to bubble everywhere. However, I don't do it outside because I don't like the flies. I'm trying to keep this process as clean as possible, especially because I'm trying to preserve this sauce for the winter. Okay, so as you can tell, I have this very large saucepan that I absolutely love it. The reason why I love it is because when I cook sauce, it allows evaporation to take place and the sauce will become thicker, because who wants thin sauce? So people often ask me, well, Mama Lil, why can't you just go ahead and buy a jar of sauce at the store? Isn't it more convenient? Yes, it's convenient. Absolutely, it's convenient. And I'm not against buying sauce. But there are so many buts when it comes to that. Number one is, have you looked at the label in the back of it and it says other spices? What other spices? I would like to know. Also, we don't know how the tomato was processed as far as peeling it. There are often used chemical peels to remove the seeds and remove the skins. As you saw, my process was very natural, just a simple heat and machine that removed it. Also, sometimes the sauces are thickened with additives to make it thicker. We're not going to do that because we're going to let evaporation thicken the sauce. So again, there's so many buts when it comes to purchasing a jar of sauce, and that's one of the reasons why I make my own sauce. Okay, so the sauce came to boil, and I'm going to lower the heat. I'm going to lower the heat as low as I can, because all I need to allow is simmering, very gentle bubbling once in a while. Now I have to turn and stir, and especially scrape the bottom of the pot, because the sauce likes to settle and burn at the bottom. So in order to prevent that, I'm going to stir this probably every 2 to 3 minutes for a whole hour. Yes, it's going to cook for an hour. In order to create a thicker sauce, it has to evaporate. So I'm going to try to keep this uncovered as much as I can. And I'm going to control the heat so the bubbles are gentle bubbles, not huge rolling bubbling. Okay, so I have removed oregano from the stems because we don't need this stems, and I'm going to chop it up into smaller manageable size. But even if they stay whole, it's fine. It's going to be just fine because it's going to go into the sauce and it's going to cook for a little bit. but I will chop it very on a smaller scale. Oh my gosh, if you guys had a smell-o-vision, you would know how wonderful this is. The aroma of fresh oregano, there is no comparison to the dried. Zero, no comparison. So the aroma is wonderful. Okay, so the sauce has been cooking for 48 minutes, almost 50 minutes. And at this point, I'm gonna start throwing in my herbs, my aromatics. Okay, so the oregano is ready. I also going to remove just the leaves from the stems because I do not need the stems. Alright, so at this point I'm going to add all of my aromatics, including the spices, the salts, the sugars. It's 10 minutes left of cooking time, and my garlic, my herbs are in here right now, and it smells amazing. Okay, I'm going to dump a quarter of a cup of sugar, 1 generous teaspoon of pepper. Again, it's to your taste, because if you like spicy, you can add even crushed red pepper flakes or something like that. I'm trying to stay more on a kid-friendly side, so I'm not going to put too much of spice. And I'm going to add some salt. So I'm going to put 1.5 tablespoons, 1 table, and eyeballing half. And I'm going to taste it, and I'm going to see if it's enough for me. Because if it's not enough, I can always add, but we all know taking it out is not exactly the same thing. So you probably will notice that the sauce already reduced almost by half, not exactly, but almost by half. And my kitchen smells heavenly. It smells like a pizza shop. So good. So the sauce is finished and it's ready for jarring. In the meanwhile, I have washed and sterilized my quart jars. Now, because I'm going to be water bath processing for over 15 minutes, I really didn't have to sterilize them. At least that's what the new regulations say. But I am going to be playing in the side of caution, and I have sterilized them anyway. Then I have all of my other equipment in boiling water. I have my funnel, I have the ladle, I've got all of the lids and rings, everything sterilized in hot boiling water. I did not boil it, I just washed them and I put them in the boiling water for a minute. Okay, so at this point I'm going to be bottling the sauce, and when I'm bottling the sauce, I'm going to be adding vinegar, 5% vinegar to each jar. Because tomato, even though it's still part of the acidic family of fruit, I'm going to be adding a little bit more vinegar just for precaution, because it's going to be water bath canned. Okay, so let me show you how I do it. I'm going to be filling up my jars, and I'm going to leave about 1/2 inch of head space. And for those who don't know what a head space means, is that it means how much space I'm going to leave before the top. So basically it's going to be 1/2 inch to the top. And the reason for that is that when we are going to be processing in the water bath canner, it's still going to continue to boil. It needs room to boil. I'm almost finished with the first jar. Now, I'm not using a debubbler because this is a liquid, and there's nothing to debubble because it's pretty much going to be filling up. And as you can tell, I'm about 1/2 inch from the liquid line to the top. Okay, so let me keep filling up all of the jars. Okay, the last thing I'm going to put into each jar is a tablespoon of vinegar, and that's going to help to keep the acidity up In case you don't want to use vinegar, you can always use citric acid, or you can use lemon juice. But lemon juice is a little bit weaker, I find, so I like to use just plain vinegar. Okay, the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to wipe the rims really quick. Okay, I'm going to be processing my jars in a water bath for 20 minutes. And then they will be ready for storage for the winter time. So the processing time is complete, and I'm going to take out my jars and let them cool on the counter. And when I hear a little pop sound, pop, 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 that means that the jars are sealing, the lids are sealing, and they are ready for storage. So, did you hear that sound? That's a wonderful sound. That's music for canners like me. Aren't they beautiful? Anyway, be encouraged and try something new.